Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Brilliant. Can everyone make their way to their seats? We're just about to start. Okay. So, we are starting a little later than scheduled, but we are going to try and keep to the schedule as much as possible. So, as most of you may already know, we are Public Child Protection Wales, and we have been fighting against the sex education that's come to all the schools within England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland since 2019. Woo! Lots and lots have gone on. Lots and lots have gone on, but before we go into this, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. The toilets are outside to the door here, to the the right-hand side. Fire exits, we've got one here on the left-hand side. We've got one out the doors this way and one out the doors to the back there. You may all have wristbands. You've got different colour wristbands. That's just to make sure that we cater for allergies. If there's something that you haven't spoken to any of the staff about with regards to allergies, then please do speak to one of us. All our team are wearing shirts like this. So if you've got any questions during the day, then find someone wearing one of these shirts and they will happily help you. So what are the reasons we've got this conference today? This is our very first conference. We've had many events over the last 4 years, but this is our very first conference. And the reason we're doing this is because we're just getting all people together that we've met along the way who are fighting brilliant causes, doing great work, getting everyone together. You're going to see there's going to be certain speakers who've got their own opinions, which we do respect. But overall, we are all absolutely disgusted with the new comprehensive sex education that has plagued our schools. So first of all, I just want to say as well to the speakers, if you can all come up the left-hand side. This is just because there's a little bit of a trip hazard here, so I don't want any accidents. And for breaks as well, we're going to have one break approximately 11:30. That's going to be 15 minutes. So we do ask everyone to come back prompt because we've got quite a lot to get through. We're going to have a lunch break at 12:45. That's going to be an hour and 15 minutes with our wonderful catering team have made a brilliant display of food, so I'm sure you're all going to very much enjoy that. We're going to have another break at 3 o'clock, and then we are going to end promptly at 4:30. So I hope you all enjoy the day. So without further ado, I'm going to speak now about our very first speaker today, and that's Kimberly Isherwood. Massive round of applause for Kimberly Isherwood. So a lot of you already know Kim. She's been around now 4 years, educating us all on what has been going on. So today she's just going to do a brief slideshow here, speaking about comprehensive sex education and briefly just talking about the dangers. So I'll leave it to Kim now, and thank you everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. This is our first annual conference and this is a big one for us. Delighted with the numbers, guys. So again, thank you all. So I'm going to open the day discussing comprehensive sexuality education. This might be a new term to many of you because all around the UK, this sex education is named something different. So RSE in Wales, SRE in England, RSHP in Scotland. It's got a slightly different name to it. But the one title you really need to look out for is health and well-being. There's a big banner this is coming under. But what it all basically is, it's all comprehensive sexuality education. Now, I'm going to start with a story here in Wales, because this is where it started for me. When an article came online back in 2020 saying the parents in Wales will not be able to take their children out of religion and sex education lessons. So, I am a criminologist who specialises in child sex abuse, and on my studies I've come across comprehensive sexuality education in the past, but it was in America. So when I saw this article online, now like I said, I'm a criminologist, sex education and sexual safeguarding is paramount. So I'm not going to protest against something like that. It is needed. So, but I was really worried, you know, age 3, the sex education was from age 3 to 16 with no parental opt-out. So I went to the Welsh Government documentation. Page 4 of the RSE code was referencing the comprehensive sexuality education called UNESCO. So obviously we got concerned and we were trying to challenge the government. This lady here, she was the education minister at the time, Kirsty Williams. She called us rotten. She said we were a willful campaign. We were putting children at risk. And if you see some of her speeches online, she's an absolute disgrace. Because according to her, our children were banking on her. They were banking on her to bring in this education. We got to an election. She didn't stand for the next election. She was too scared. She got off on that stop. Then we had Jeremy Miles. So Jeremy Miles, we tried challenging him. And Jeremy Miles put out a statement on us. This statement went viral. It was all in the papers. All the schools got the same message. They reckon we were putting out misinformation. So we went down the normal process of trying to inform people. And like we said, the media was quoting Jeremy Miles that we were putting out misinformation. But the media didn't tell you that we showed them the evidence. That's me with Wales Online. You will never see the truth printed in the papers. You'll just read stories about us, but none of them are true. Our concerns were never, ever raised, you know? So we launched a legal battle against them. We took them to court. We had to pay them a total of £62,000 in costs. We went into court. There was 5 parents. We all had different concerns. A lot of my concerns were comprehensive sexuality education. Again, the courts tried arguing we were putting out misinformation. Our barrister, Paul Diamond, shut that down. It was not us promoting misinformation. It was the Welsh Government. So we proved that this was global. We proved this was in all 4 countries of the UK. And we proved they all adopted it in March 2017. But what did the papers say? We lost the legal challenge. What we lost was an argument. We lost an argument on parental rights. They successfully argued that parental rights do not exist. And if they did exist, they would be absolutely minute anyway. So you might have seen in the news lately, I think it was this week, Keir Starmer is saying things like, parents have lost their right to see lesson content. You're being played. Parents have no rights. This was proven in the High Court. They used case law from around Europe to apply this to us here. We also have a letter where schools in England are referencing our case against parents there. So everyone in the UK, you do not have parental rights. Okay, it's a myth. And with regards to the lesson content as well, when Keir Starmer's saying you have no right to see it, there's been court cases on that as well, okay? And the court has sided with the sex education organisations, and I will quote, they claim it is not in the public interest. So you'll find our case law on the website. It's not all bad. It's not all bad at all. We lost the argument on parental rights and that was it. What teachers do not know, and what is highlighted throughout this case law, is it is down to the head teacher what your child is taught. Anything inappropriate or damaging is taught to your child, you go for the head teacher, because this case law has put this on their head. So the head teacher will say these are government guidelines, but the government guidelines and government legislation put the blame onto the teachers. And now let's bring us back to this comprehensive sexuality education. We've spoken about parental rights, so they don't exist. But this education is rights-based. Children's rights, bodily rights, and sexual and reproductive rights. Here in Wales, children's rights are law. And when I spoke to Susie Davis, who was a Minister of the Senate at the time, she said we have a hierarchy of rights in Wales, where children's rights override everything. Children's rights, sexual and reproductive rights. Does anyone know your children have sexual rights when they're born? That's something you need to look into. We did put this in our petition to the government. The government removed the link and replaced it with a pro-abortion website. And we got the emails to prove that. So what's wrong with this comprehensive sexuality education? It's based on 3 theories. The first theory, this is the theory that our group does a lot of work on. This is our background. Sexual from birth. So there's academics out there who claim we are sexual from birth. This is the work of Dr. Alfred Kinsey. How do they claim we are sexual from birth? They did some studies. They published a book. This book, The Sexual Behavior of the Human Male, this book is supposed to be world-class research on sexuality. But chapter 5 is quite telling. Chapter 5 is the sexual behavior of the adolescent male. Let's have a look there. Age, 5 months. Number of orgasms, 3. Time involved, unknown. Age, 11 months. Number of orgasms, 10. Time involved, 1 hour. Age, 11 months. 14 orgasms. Time involved, 38 minutes. This is where they get their research and they claim we are sexual from birth or sexual beings. So that is the first theory. That's the one that we as a group fight most. Then you have the gender theory. This is the work of Dr. John Money, and the most famous story behind this is David Reimer. When you leave here today, if you go and you Google David Reimer and John Money, you will hear David himself in his own words telling you what happened to him. So gender theory was born because they believed that gender was a social construct. And John Money was faced with 2 twin boys, very small twin boys, who had been circumcised, and one had a botched circumcision. And Dr. John Money said, it's fine, nothing to worry about. We can raise this child as a girl. And that's exactly what they did. They tried to raise David as a girl. But David knew he was different. One thing led to another. Cut a long story short, David realized he wasn't a girl. And then David transitioned back into a boy. But by that time, it was too late. Because John Money had published his research as an absolute success. Now, what happened to these boys was horrific. I don't want to darken your day, but they were forced to perform sex acts on each other, and David had to take the role of the female. They faced horrid abuse. Both of them died very young. They took their own lives. This is how gender theory is looking now in the classroom. We have the genderbread person, and we have the gender unicorn. 79 genders. And then the third, but not final theory, is the queer theory. Now, years ago, queer was a slur, a homophobic slur. But now it is sold as something hip and cool. Hip and cool, everyone's cool to be queer. This comes from the work of Michael Foucault there, Judith Butler, and last but not least, Professor Emma Reynolds. You need to keep your eye out for Professor Emma Reynolds because she is the leading professor here in Wales, driving this not only all around the UK, but Europe and America as well. Her work is in activism packs for young teenagers in America. It's called Agenda, and it's being promoted by the NSPCC. So what's wrong with queer theory? Queer in childhood involves not just the queering of sex and gender and sexual binary oppositions such as male, masculinity, female, femininity, and heterosexual, homosexual, but also the generational binaries between adult and child. So queer theory likes to erode away the binaries. And if you look there, they say the generational binaries between adult and child. They do not believe in childhood. They think innocence is a myth. And when you read their papers, they say things like adult plus child equals okay. A child is equal to us in every which way, including sexual activities. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why we oppose comprehensive sexuality education. So how do we know this is in the whole of the UK? Well, this document here, published by International Planned Parenthood Federation, Sexuality Education in Europe, this is an overview of 25 countries. In here, it talks about the UK. Page 174 is the study in England, but there's a little side note that even though the studies were done in England, it was to apply to the whole of the UK. Page 8 of this book tells us that the document they used in decision-making was this one here, the one on You Were Right. So that's the World Health Organization document, Standards for Sexuality Education in Europe. Now, according to the International Planned Parenthood Federation document, the World Health Organization framework was used in decision-making. So politicians, health officials, educational officials, this is the framework they used. Let's have a look at this framework. So as you can see there, it starts from age 0 to 4, okay? So age 0 to 4. We're told this education is about sexuality and different relationships and things like that. So we like to look at the sexuality part. So when you look here from birth up to age 4, sexuality is enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, early childhood masturbation. The fact that enjoyment and physical closeness is a normal part of everyone's life. Tenderness and physical closeness is an expression of love and affection. Gain an awareness of gender identity. Talk about unpleasurable feelings in one's own body. Express own needs and wishes and boundaries. For example, in the context of playing doctor. And apparently, after these things, these children will have a positive attitude towards one body with all its functions and a positive body image. That's up to age 4. Let's go up to age 6. Again, enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body. The meaning and expression of sexuality. Appropriate sexual language. Sexual feelings. Talk about sexual matters because that gives them communication skills. Consolidate their gender identity. Use sexual language in a non-offensive way. And this will give our children a positive body image and respect for others. Now, age 9 to 12. Same thing. Now, what you will find in most of our documents and guidelines, when you get to age 9, you're looking at the first sexual experience. Okay? So, gender orientation, sexual behavior of young people, love, being in love, pleasure, masturbation, orgasm, make a conscious decision to have sexual experiences or not. And this is pretty much how it goes, okay? So what they will achieve from this is acceptance, respect, and an understanding of diversity in sexuality and sexual orientation. Sex should be mutually consensual, voluntary, equal, age-appropriate, context-appropriate, and self-respecting. So these are the guidelines that were used for all 4 countries in the UK to adopt comprehensive sexuality education. And this is what we proved in court. There we go, age 6 to 9, love, being in love, tenderness, sex in the media, enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, appropriate sexual language. This goes on and on and on, okay? So let's bring us back to this document here then. This is the UNESCO document. So this was published in 2018, and this is a document that's being used in schools all across the UK, including Wales. Now, 2 of us in this organisation are RSE teacher trainers, and we are licence holders. So we can tell you with certainty that this is a guidance that we are told to go to if we're stuck on things. This is what I call the younger, funkier cousin to the World Health Organization, because this is beefed up with rights. It's a little bit easier on the eye than the World Health Organization document, and it starts from age 5, but it's pretty much got the same theme going through it. Age 5 to 8, people can show love for each other through touching and intimacy. Children should understand what is appropriate and not appropriate touching, good touch, bad touch. State that people show love and care for other people in different ways, including kissing, hugging, touching, and sometimes through sexual behaviours. And apparently that's knowledge. Again, here we have, age 5 to 8, define gender and biological sex, reflect what they feel about their biological sex and gender, understand gender roles. Here we have again, this is age 5 to 8 in the blue here. Describe male and female responses to sexual stimulation. Explain that many boys and girls begin to masturbate during puberty. So this goes on and on. It's the same kind of stuff, but like I said, it's a little kinder on the eye, and it is beefed up with rights, children's rights, bodily rights. Again, as you can see, human beings are born with the capacity to enjoy their sexuality throughout their life. That's the sexual from birth theory. So this is littered all the way through the UNESCO document, which is on our hub website. This is the main guidance for the whole of the UK. So if parents don't know what to do, teachers don't know what to do, they're advised to go there. Now, like I said, we've challenged this in court. We tried to prevent it. This was a preventative campaign. Now we're at the stage of damage limitation. So I'm going to leave you guys on a little cliffhanger here, because I'm going to be coming back at the end of the day to round this all up. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is what I wanted, what we wanted to prevent.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Graphic lessons on oral sex, how to choke your partner safely, and 72 genders. This is what passes for relationships and sex education in British schools. Across the country, children are being subjected to lessons that are age inappropriate, extreme, sexualising and inaccurate, often using resources from unregulated organisations that are actively campaigning to undermine parents. This is not a victory for equality, it is a catastrophe for childhood. Will my right honourable friend honour his commitment to end inappropriate sex education by commissioning an independent inquiry into the nature and extent of this safeguarding scandal?
Can I say I share my honourable friend's concerns and thank her for her work in this area. That's why I've asked the Department for Education to ensure that schools are not teaching inappropriate or contested content in RSHE. Our priority should always be the safety and well-being of children, and schools should also make curriculum content and materials available to parents. As a result of all of this, we are bringing forward a review of RSHE statutory guidance, and we'll start our consultation as soon as possible.
So this was just after the Claire Page case. Claire Page took a sex education organisation to court to see her child's lesson content. They were told it's not in the public interest. Rishi Sunak did do the inquiry into the sex education. When it was complete, the findings were not in the public interest. So that's something that is a theme that you're going to hear a lot today. And he finished there, the Department for Education was doing an investigation, I will come back at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and show you a letter from them. So that's all from me now, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the speakers.
Okay, thank you so much, Kim. That was amazing, really informative. So I'm just going to go on now to our next speaker. Many of you may already know our next speaker, Nigel Thorne. Massive round of applause for Nigel Thorne. So Nigel Thorne, being a former software engineer, he retired back in December 2022 to raise awareness and do a lot of research and work with regards to queer theory and gender ideologies. So Nigel, I'm going to leave it with you now, and a big round of applause again for Nigel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. And I'd like to thank PCP Wales for organising this conference. It's an absolutely fantastic event. And for all the work they're doing, pushing back against the insanity that's being pushed into Welsh schools. It's fantastic the work they do. As Lucia said, I was previously a software engineer, and I left that job just over 2 years ago because I realised the Welsh Government were changing the definition of words. And that didn't seem very sensible to me. In software engineering, if you change the definition of variables, things break. So I started researching into why the Welsh Government were changing the definition of words. And it is as a result of that research that I've been invited to come and speak to you today. So I might be a bit controversial today. In fact, you don't know what I'm going to say. There is a very wise maxim, which is you shouldn't talk about religion and politics at dinner parties. Now, there's a reason for that. It's because people feel uncomfortable. People feel it spoils the atmosphere. I like talking about religion and politics, but I don't get invited to any dinner parties. So I do think it's important to talk about Christianity, because it seems to me that the Welsh Government has become dangerously disconnected from our Christian cultural heritage. So I'll be talking about that today. The Welsh Government are like a boat without a rudder, buffeted by fashionable ideas blowing out of Cardiff University. And there's lots of fashionable ideas blowing out of Cardiff University. Academia is the seedbed of a new religion, wokeism, whose followers hope to make the world a better place. And the early Christians hoped to make the world a better place, but whereas Christianity was forged out of a desire to overcome tribalism, wokeism is the exact opposite. Wokeism is the antithesis of Christianity. Wokeism foments tribalism, it stokes division, it spreads half-truths and lies, and it is being spread into every area of Welsh society, including Welsh schools. So I will talk about wokeism, but now I'm going to talk about Christianity for 2 minutes. And there is a chance that some people here will not agree with what I'm saying. That's fine. Don't leave. It's only 2 minutes, and there are other speakers after me, okay? So just hang on in there. So here we go. So the ancient Greek philosophers recognized that all of us have a body, and we have a soul or psyche or mind. The terms are synonymous. And the mind has 3 parts. The philosopher Aristotle taught people that the art of persuasion involved an appeal to our pathos, which is our emotions, the logos, which is our reason, and ethos, which is our trusted source of authority. The philosopher Plato wrote in the book Timaeus about a world soul. And if the individual soul has a three-part nature, it follows that the world soul also has a three-part nature. So, in his letter to the Galatians, St. Paul wrote, "You are all sons of God in Christ Jesus. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus." Paul encourages us to divest ourselves of our group identity, our tribal identity, and acknowledge the worth of a universal reason. So those who have received Holy Communion will know that the celebrant will say, "Body of Christ," before offering the Eucharist. Christ is in heaven. We are encouraged to be part of the body of Christ on earth. So what does it mean to be part of the body of Christ? Well, the Gospel of Mark tells us, because there is a section of Scripture bookended by two stories of Christ healing blind men. The first is the blind man of Bethany. The second is Bartimaeus, the blind man of Jericho. Bartimaeus means son of Timaeus, a nod to the work of Plato. In this section of Scripture, Christ interacts with the disciples on three occasions. First, Christ rejects the desire to impose our will on others. This is Christ talking to our pathos, our emotions. Secondly, Christ rejects the idea that people are less virtuous than others simply because they belong to a different group. This is Christ talking to our logos, or our reason. Thirdly, Christ rejects the conviction that we are more worthy than others because we subscribe to a faith that they don't belong to. So this is Christ talking to our ethos, our source of moral authority. And this is an argument that no belief system is above criticism. This is an argument for free speech. So, how do we resolve conflict? We resolve conflict through dialogue. I may think I know what's good and true. I might be wrong. You may think you know what's good and true. You might be wrong. But we talk to each other and listen to each other so we can understand each other's point of views. The root of the word dialogue is logos. So, to reiterate, Christianity rejects the desire to impose our will on others. Christianity rejects the idea that people are less virtuous than others simply because they belong to a different group. And Christianity rejects the belief that we are more worthy than others because we subscribe to a belief system that they don't. Does that make sense? Okay. And do you think that if more people held those values, that it would lead to a more socially cohesive society? Well, I think so. And maybe the Welsh Government should be pushing Christian education into Welsh schools. But that's not the path they've chosen. So, academics have been influenced by postmodern philosophers, including postmodern philosophers see the world in terms of battle between groups. It's all power and oppression. And one of the most influential of postmodern philosophers is Jacques Derrida. So Derrida argued that all Western philosophy, all the way back to Plato, is too logocentric. It focuses too much on reason. And as Christianity is predicated on the understanding that Christ is the universal reason, this is an assault on Christianity. It is also an assault on the idea that there is such a thing as an objective truth. Derrida also argued that within society there are binary oppositions, and one pole of the binary oppresses the other. So men oppress women, white people oppress black people, adults oppress children, and so on and so on and so on. Everything is seen through the lens of power and oppression. And we can see the results of this postmodern thought in some of the language that is used in Welsh Government documents, such as white privilege and white fragility and Black History Month and decolonising the curriculum and anti-racism and even sex positivity. But the impact of these ideas is particularly striking in the change to the definition of the word gender. Now, the word gender used to be defined as a synonym for sex. Its usage in this context became more prevalent when the word sex itself became defined as a synonym for sexual intercourse. So the word gender was used instead to stop men writing yes, please next to the box mark sex on official forms. But that word has now been redefined. And that redefinition has been imposed on us from above under the influence of feminism. So Judith Butler is an American academic who has been influenced by the writings of Jacques Derrida, whose seminal work, Gender Trouble, was published in 1990. And Derrida argues that binary oppositions, as I've said, are hierarchical. One pole oppresses the other. Butler argues that it is the language that is doing the oppression. The language is oppressive because there are social expectations associated with the words man and woman and male and female. Butler believes that by changing discourse, by downplaying biological sex and promoting the significance of a personal gender, this will undermine those social expectations, and this will be liberating for women. So in 1995, the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women was held in Beijing. Hillary Clinton famously addressed the conference. It was hailed as a breakthrough for women's rights. Before the conference, there were preparatory meetings to thrash out disagreements. And one of the disagreements was on the definition of the word gender, surprise, surprise. And this is all documented in the book by Dale O'Leary, The Gender Agenda, Redefining Equality. So there's so much conflict regarding the definition of the word gender that a working group was set up to come up with a definition. But the working group didn't come up with a definition. So the output from the conference was a platform for action, which was a document which listed all the actions that government should take to promote women's rights. That platform for action mentioned the word gender over 200 times, but there was no collective agreement on what that word meant, which is astonishing. So in 2018, the Welsh Government commissioned a gender equality review. Dr. Alison Parkin from Cardiff University was the chief author of the review. So in the review, Parkin referenced the work of Judith Butler. She wrote, latterly, postmodernist feminisms, queer and trans theories have argued on the way to creating a level playing field. The gender binary should be challenged, disrupted, and the fluidity of gender identities recognized. Following on from the review, in 2020, the Welsh Government published the Advancing Gender Equality in Wales plan. The plan describes the Welsh Government vision. A gender-equal Wales means an equal sharing of power, resources, and influence for all women, men, and non-binary people. So, if non-binary is at the same level as women and men, then obviously women and men no longer relate to biological sex. Women and men relate to how you feel inside. So this is an imposition of gender identity. So remember, most people who see themselves as non-binary are young women, and many of these are seeking to medically change their bodies, usually with double mastectomies. Dr. Hilary Cass describes this as the fastest growing group under the trans umbrella, being the non-binary group. And this is not real. Okay? This is queer theory. This is being imposed on us by radical feminists. And young people are sacrificing their bodies for an ideology. The architect of the Welsh Government Relationships and Sexuality Code, as Kim mentioned earlier, is Professor Reynolds. Professor Reynolds' published works contain copious references to Judith Butler, and in her 2004 book, Girls, Boys and Junior Sexualities, Reynolds quotes academic Richard Johnson. Queer theory is linked to forms of politics which deliberately seek to break down the fixed boundaries between the hetero-homo, gender and other binaries to multiply sexual categories and ultimately dissolve them. And as Kim mentioned, she further writes, queering childhood involves not just the queering of sex and gender and sexual binary oppositions such as male and female, but also the generational binaries adult and child. So we can make an educated guess where queering the adult-child binary will lead. So Dr. Alison Parkin proofread the book before publication. So Emma Reynolds works very closely with Brooke, a charity that works in Welsh schools. Brooke tells children that gender is not a synonym for sex. Brooke tells children that the idea that there are only two genders is a mainly Western cultural idea. Kelly Harris is head of participation at Brooke. Kelly Harris is chair of the Children's Commissioner for Wales Advisory Board. Kelly Harris does not believe that parents have an automatic right to be told if their child changes gender in school. In 2022, Brooke announced they'd won the contract to provide teacher training in the Central South Consortium. In December 2022, Kelly Harris had a Twitter exchange with the now current Education Minister, Lynn Eagle, celebrating the PCP Wales court case loss. Last November, the Welsh Government put out a consultation document where the definition of gender has been changed again because, you know, governments can change definition of words these days as often as they like. So it previously included the sociological definition. That's now been dropped. All that remains is a psychological definition. It reads, gender for the purposes of this guidance. Gender is a term used to refer to whether someone's internal sense of themselves is female, male, or non-binary. A person's gender does not always align with the sex they were registered at birth. So I'm going to bang on about this again. It's important that we understand what is happening here. A word that was previously defined as an objective truth has been redefined as a subjective feeling, and this has been done for entirely political purposes. Your children are being indoctrinated with the full backing of the Welsh Government. I cannot understand, or I cannot believe they do not understand what they are doing. The evidence is all there. So, ladies and gentlemen, Aristotle taught that the art of persuasion involved an appeal to our pathos, the emotions, the reason, and the source of authority. There have always been children who felt uncomfortable with their biological sex. But when gender was defined as a synonym for sex, they were not able to rationalize that feeling into a belief that they were born in the wrong body. They usually outgrew their discomfort. The Welsh Government have changed that. They have deliberately given children the language that enables them to rationalize a delusion. In January 2025, it was reported that the number of under-18s in England seeking help for gender distress had increased 50-fold in 10 years. There has no doubt been a similar increase in Wales. Christianity teaches us that it is wrong to desire to impose our will on others, and we resolve conflict through dialogue. Wokeism is a new religion whose followers have no compunction in imposing their will on others. Dialogue has been made impossible because any pushback against this redefinition of the word gender is met with accusations of transphobia. Gender non-conforming and vulnerable Welsh school children have been and will continue to be victims of the Welsh Government's ideological agenda. The Welsh Government are sacrificing your children to the woke gods in pursuit of their feminist goals. This is an educational and medical scandal of historical proportions.
Thank you so much, Nigel. That was absolutely amazing. Brilliant. Thank you. Now, if any of you haven't seen it, Nigel has actually got a YouTube channel. I think it's called Turfman. It's on our programme. Very interesting. He's got lots and lots of fantastic presentations with some insightful information. In fact, we did have Nigel on our own YouTube channel and our website doing, we copied his videos from his YouTube channel. So we have got quite a few on our website as well. So I've learned a lot from Nigel. I've got to say, I have learned a lot. I think many people who have seen his videos can say the same. So thank you, Nigel. That was brilliant. So we are going to have another speaker on before our first break. So our next speaker, she is actually part of a coalition we've got going on across the UK, where we've got 17 parent groups who are all fighting against this sex education. She is Rebecca Manning from Too Much Too Young. So we can have a massive round of applause for Rebecca Manning. Woo! Too Much Too Soon. They've got a table at the back there so you can see some of their material, and they've done fantastic work in England. So I will leave that. Oh, I meant to be clicking this. Oh, sorry. I'm not doing very well here. There we are. There's Rebecca Mann. So I'll leave that with you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Lucia, for your lovely introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am honoured to be invited to speak here today at PCP Wales's first ever conference. I know we're all really grateful for everything they've done, raising awareness, and more importantly, taking action to do their best to protect the innocence of children. I hope you will all join me in giving them a very well-deserved round of applause. As Lucia said, my name's Rebecca Manning, and I am here today with a few other ladies to represent our group, Too Much Too Young, UK Parents Against RSE in Schools. We formed in 2022 after my friend's daughter brought home some work from school she considered most inappropriate for a young girl, and my friend posted about it on Facebook. Many parents joined in on the post with stories of similar things happening with their children. It became clear there was a problem, and the more we looked, the worse it seemed. I was aware that a new RSE curriculum was in the works, as I had been ready to take part in the parent consultation at my son's primary school. This didn't actually happen because COVID lockdowns came and schools closed. I don't believe parents in the UK were consulted or informed properly before the curriculum was rubber-stamped and it was rolled out to our children. It was already in action when my son went back to school post-lockdowns. Many of us found the subjects covered to be wholly inappropriate for the age of the children they were being given to. So we decided to create a Facebook group to raise awareness, as many parents were as yet unaware of the graphic nature of some parts of the new RSE curriculum. We now have over 6,500 members from all walks of life and from all across the UK, helping each other navigate what is best to do when what your children are being taught at school contradicts your family's beliefs, be they religious or otherwise. Or your children are given information that you would be happy with at some point, but feel that your child isn't old enough for yet. It wasn't long before we discovered PCP Wales and were blown away by the work they were doing, and so we began supporting them at their rallies. We've been working alongside them for a few years now, helping parents to understand the RSE curriculum and see beneath the palatable top layer of the way it is presented. Because at a quick glance, it can seem that it's truly for the good of children. You need to scratch the surface a bit to see the potential harm. Many of us in this room, who have not only scratched the surface but dug right down in there, are honestly horrified at where we believe this could all lead, and this is why we speak up now. I've never been a political person or an activist. Public speaking is not my day job by any means, although I must admit I have learned to use a mic through my work. However, this is a bit of a change for me from scream if you want to go faster. And no, I'm not doing my fairground mic voice. I am very privileged to have been born into our country's wonderful showman community and have spent my life serving you and your children as you enjoy days out at outdoor events, festivals and fairgrounds across the country. For those that are unaware, showmen are a community of about 20,000 people in the UK who have managed, in this ever-changing world we've been living in, to hang on to many traditional values because of our smaller community in a community that means we all know each other or know of each other. Reputations stick of any type, and this as a way of keeping you on a good moral path. I expect many communities in the country would have been like it once upon a time, and I hope many still are. As a community, we are strongly opposed to this new form of RSE. Being a showman has given me a perspective that's a bit different to the usual. Firstly, I can observe the effects that society and the sex education we've had so far in schools have had on the wider population compared to our children, whom we have mostly withdrawn from these lessons completely up until recent times when it's all changed. Showmen are very private people when it comes to personal matters. The sex education that had been given in schools even before it got worse goes against everything we believe in. Our children are brought up with very high moral standards and respect. Reproduction of males and females is not discussed with our children until we feel the time is right. We like our children to remain children for as long as possible. We firmly believe that the parents are the only people that will know when their individual child will be ready to know about these things. In our community, the mother is usually the main person to have these discussions with girls. This wouldn't usually happen in front of any males, and the father with the boys, privately also. We rarely have children out of wedlock. We have long and successful marriages, low divorce rates, very few teenage mums and no abandoned children. We are confident that our way of safeguarding our children until adulthood works, as it's worked for many generations before us. We certainly do not feel that children need to be taught about sex or sexualities to be kind and considerate of those around them, or that school teachers have automatic rights because of their profession to raise discussions with our children that in any other setting, with any other adult, would likely be illegal. Because of my industry, I have been around the nation's children all my working life. Since I married at 22, my husband and I have toured our vintage fairground rides around the country at large outdoor events. Children are my customers, and for over 30 years I have served and observed them at many of the same events that we attended in our early marriage. I serve people from all demographics and all backgrounds. I don't like the changes that I am seeing in our country's children. Compared to 20 years ago, they are less agile, struggling to jump into swing seats, less happy. There are children crying and having meltdowns everywhere. Many children have additional needs, more and more each year. The newest development is children are conditioned to use card payment, which I find very scary. They also can't add up cash or work out change anymore, even at secondary level. A terribly sad development is the amount of children I am seeing with crisscross scars on their arms and upper legs from self-harm. This is something I never used to see before the last couple of years, and I hope fervently to stop seeing as soon as possible. Children have no awareness of their own surroundings or safety anymore, no common sense. I'll explain it like this. 20 years ago, a showman took a selection of rides to a different country, outside of Europe, to operate. I'm naming no countries so as not to cause offence. When he got there, he was told he would have to fence all his rides in with a gate. He inquired why, as he had never needed to do it here. He was told the people here are quite stupid and they run into moving things. He was shocked. Customers here, even children at the time, had the sense not to run into moving things. Now here we are, only 20 years later, and we have to fence in all the rides. I'm not the only one in my industry seeing this. Many of us are saying the same thing. My friend Zoe, who is here with me today, runs a hooker duck stall and has done so for many years. What she said to me sums it up. People used to know how to hook ducks. Let's be fair, it's not overly complicated. Not anymore. It seems full instructions are now needed, as well as self-control from Zoe, as she keeps the sarcasm out of her offered reply, well, you hook a duck. Obviously, I'm generalising, and there are lovely, sensible children all over the country, but it's the trend I'm seeing, and I don't like it one bit. I'm not laying all of this at the door of schools by any means. We all realise by now that it's much bigger than that. But it is my view that schools are failing on an enormous scale in their duty to safeguard the children we entrust to their care. It's very clear to me that the information overload that today's child is subjected to is damaging to them. Is it possible that all the focus on mental health that today's child gets could be causing them to have bad mental health? I don't need statistics or surveys to see the changes. I can see them with my own two eyes. As I said at the beginning, I'm not a political person. Never felt the need to protest anything before. I've seen lots of positive changes during my life. Acceptance of gay relationships, greater equality between the sexes, attempts to stamp out racism. Progress that I have seen as very good in lots of areas. But not all things presented to us as progress take us forwards. Some take us backwards to a place I don't want to go. I don't want a world where children are treated as mini adults, expected to make sensible decisions. I definitely don't want a world where parents are not allowed to protect their own children from anything they consider could harm them. Or a world where children have sexual rights or are believed to be sexual from birth. Because that's the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard. Childhood innocence needs protection from not only unsuitable sexual material or gender ideology, but also from all the problems in the world that they're not even yet able to do anything about. Teach them to be kind and courteous, pick up their litter, and keep themselves and their environment clean and tidy. That's enough for a child. The rest can come later. We're adults long enough. Thank you. If you want to speak to us, we're over there at our little stall, so we've got some books and things.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was very insightful. Brilliant. Thank you. So Rebecca has actually spoken at quite a few of our events, and as she stated there, she's been a huge supporter since she's known us. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you for the work you're doing in England. Absolutely brilliant. I just sort of want to touch on what she was talking about there with the importance of marriage. Now, it seems to sort of be it seems to be something that the Welsh Government sex education doesn't really favour. They tend to be favouring promiscuous behaviours. Marriage is often seen as suppressive to women by the likes of Marxists. We're going to sort of see a bit of the Marxism culture later when Lisa Noland comes up and speaks. Marxists hate marriage. They hate marriage. They think it's oppressive to women. They don't like the nuclear family, which nuclear family means man, woman, and children. Marxists hate that. They don't think it's a fair thing at all. But as we all know, it is the best way to bring up a family. Yeah, it is the best way. It's a good support for children. It's not suppressive when a man and woman work together in the interest of their family. It's the way it should be. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gents, we're actually going to have our first break now. It is 11:45, so if you can be back at 12 o'clock, that would be fantastic. Thank you. There's some snacks there at the side there. Okay, thank you.